First of all, thank you all very, very much. I see most people who have been here for many, many years consistently. And as I usually say, out of this forum comes legislative reaction, results, and hopefully even on the county level, or on the county level. So good things are happening. I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that there's an empty seat here. And for extenuating circumstances, my partner in Albany on the South Fork, who has for many, many years co-hosted this, cannot be with us. The good news is that there's an empty seat here and someone of great importance, hopefully, will come and occupy this seat. But I don't want to blow their cover. In Fred's place, where's Laura?
Laura's over here.
At the end. Laura, I don't know your new name. Is it still Stevenson?
No, it's Tuman. Tuman now.
Okay. Laura, who's Fred's right arm, will take his place. So why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves, and then we'll start it off. Supervisor?
Ed Romaine, Brookhaven Town Supervisor.
Jay Schneiderman, Deputy Presiding Officer, Suffolk County Legislature, and Chairman of the Parks Committee.
Susan Carter, International Dark Sky Association.
Kate Rogers, Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals. Laura Tuman, Assemblyman Fred Thiel.
Greg Lower from Senator LaValle's office.
Jeff Keto, Senator LaValle's office, and we'll be passing around a sign-in sheet as well.
Karen Meek Gallagher, Suffolk County Water Authority.
Kevin McDonald, Age Conservancy.
Cody Giglio, Councilwoman, Town of Riverhead.
Thomas McAbee, Lloyd Magazine Water Trust.
Malcolm Bowman, Marine Sciences, Stony Brook University.
Christopher Gokin, New York League of Conservation Voters.
Adrian Esposito, Citizens Campaign for the Environment.
Bob DeLuca, Group of the East End.
Andrea Spilka, Southampton Town Civic Coalition.
John Turner, representing the Preserve Plum Island Coalition.
Jane Pizzulo, Sierra Club Long Island Group.
Paul Zeems, Quorum Civic, and Sierra Club Long Island Group.
Yes.
Chris Kreider with Save the Sound.
Christina Giacomaza, Portchester Citizens for Open Space, designated parkland.
Peter Scully, I'm the Regional Director of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. I also serve as Chairman of the Central Conference Joint Planning and Policy Commission.
John Pavlik, Executive Director of Central Pond Barrens Commission.
Yvette Deville, County Land Trust.
John Wolsey, County Land Trust. Herb Strobel, Allen Village Museum Farm.
Dale Moyer, Mayor Property Extension, Suffolk County.
Hi, I'm Louise Harrison. I'm a private citizen. Also have a consulting firm, Conservation and Natural Areas Planning.
Byron Young, Eastern Long Island Audubon, and Seconic River Fish Restoration Commission.
Sandra Reynolds, I'm a resident of Portchester, interested in environmental.
Dave Bergen, Southwell Town Trustee, and also Dean here at the Culinary Arts. I'm your host tonight.
Bradley Bender, Councilman with the Town of Southampton.
George Hoffman, Setauket Harbor Task Force.
Allison Branco, Director of the Con Estuary Program.
They came for the Long Island Pine Barrens Society.
Karen Brewer, Clemens River Watershed Trust Fund, part of the Open Space Council.
Mike Madigan, Open Space Council.
Kevin McAllister, Defend H2O.
James Johnston, Random Park Civic.
Sarah Inker, Suffolk County Legislator.
Dan Glazio, Peconic Baykeeper.
And Bridget Fleming from the Southampton Town Council. Hi, Denise Fizio with National Public Horses Association.
Rob Carpenter, Long Island Farm Bureau.
Karen Navarro, Long Island Farm Bureau.
Kara Hahn, Suffolk County Legislator, Chair of the Legislature's Environment Planning and Agriculture Committee.
Sid Vale, Wading River Civic Association.
Good evening, Tom Talbot, Middle Island Civic Association.
Al Krupski, Suffolk County Legislator, District 1, resident of Cutchogue.
Anthony Palumbo, State Assemblyman, 2nd Assembly District, resident of New Suffolk, not related to that Palumbo. But, welcome to our 2nd Assembly District.
Okay. Let's start it off. Karen, you want to start it off?
Sure. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and I just want to introduce Rob Carpenter to everybody. He's our administrative director. I know everybody is aware that the Long Island Farm Bureau has gone through some changes and in our office, and Rob is our administrative director, and then we will soon be hiring a public policy director. So Rob will fill you in on our projects.
Good. Well, thank you very much. My name is Rob Carpenter. I'm the Administrative Director of Long Island Farm Bureau. And I'd like to point out that Suffolk County continues to be one of the leading agricultural counties in New York State in terms of gross sales of agricultural products. Additionally, agricultural operations play a large role in Long Island's leading industry, tourism. Agriculture is responsible for sales tax generation in many of our segments and contributes to a rural quality of life not available in most of Long Island, and is responsible for providing food, fiber, and enjoyment for Long Island residents. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Senator LaValle for his support of Long Island's agricultural industry. Most recently, with his funding support to the agricultural industry's efforts with the Suffolk County Agricultural Stewardship Task Force for nitrogen and pesticide reduction. This task force is made up of the following organizations, including the County of Suffolk, DEC, Soil and Water Conservation District, NRCS, Suffolk County Water Authority, the Conic Estuary Program, Cornell Cooperative Extension, Suffolk County Health Department, Suffolk County Planning Department, American Farmland Trust, and Long Island Farm Bureau. Our purpose is to find a solution to reducing agricultural inputs into the groundwater using scientific methods to effect change. With no certified technician on Long Island capable of crafting certified nutrient management plans, this funding will give our local soil and water conservation district technicians the opportunity to update their training and certification to assist the farm community. Additionally, this will also allow Cornell Cooperative Extension to research methods and find solutions to help farmers with better stewardship practices. Going forward, this will be important as we see a number of young people taking an active interest in farming on Long Island, including new generations of long-time established farm families. We need to ensure that there is land and opportunities for these young and emerging farmers to grow their business and survive here on Long Island. We would also like to thank the Senator for assistance with our Grown on Long Island marketing efforts. This mechanism allows our farmers to brand their products and market them with local pride. It is important that all Long Island residents have the opportunity to experience the excitement of visiting a farm or a farmer's market or going to the grocery store and purchasing a product grown in their own backyard. On a separate note, Long Island agriculture is concerned about the wildlife damage that is occurring on our farms and forests. We have been building coalition support to address this problem on the East End. While we know that it can be a sensitive subject for most people, we realize we need to address this issue before it gets further out of hand. Sustainable populations of wildlife are not only impacting our farms, but are destroying the understory of our coastal forests. I look forward to working with you on Long Island agricultural issues in the weeks and years to come. And at this point, I would like to turn it over to Long Island Farm Bureau President Karen Navarro for some comments on the marine industry.
Thanks, Rob. And I'd like to thank the Senator for hosting this roundtable. It really is a productive forum. I think a lot of good ideas come forward. And also thank you for the support you've given Long Island Farm Bureau and the Farmers of Long Island. Just a couple of marine-related issues. We have a group of farmers, shellfish farmers, that are interested in growing kelp, sugar kelp, and are unable to do so in New York State because we can't get to underwater land access. So we're looking for a bill that will allow us to cultivate kelp and other marine plants on our underwater lands that we use for shellfish cultivation. The other advantage to doing this is we're also looking at growing marine plants in conjunction with shellfish farms for the biological services that they impart. We can draw more nitrogen out of the water, but when we harvest the plants, and there are even some plants that we grow specifically for biological services, remove them from the estuary and use them for compost or pig feed. So we're hoping to do that. And then there's a project that the Noank Aquaculture Cooperative has been working on with the Peconic Land Trust with funding from the National Grid Foundation. We were able to get enough money together through the sale of our Peconic Pearls oysters to do a environmental project. So we worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension to do sampling in the estuary. They have patented technology that enables them to find the groundwater where it enters the bay, sample it, and determine the flow rate of the water coming in, and also sample it for, in this case, we sampled it for nitrogen. So what we're hoping is that we can demonstrate that this technology will work in the Peconic estuary and use it to determine where the actual nitrogen input is the highest, so that with so little money to address the problem, we can find the areas that are in need of mitigation first. So we sampled one area near a high-density residential area in Flanders, another area out in Orient adjacent to a farm, and the one other area that we wanted to do was adjacent to a undeveloped piece of property, Hubbard Park, but the northwest wind in December kind of ruined that project. So there's one more sample site that we need to work on, but we'll be releasing the data from it probably this summer. So those are our projects, but in general, just trying to work with the partners that we have here on Long Island and be a productive partner and solve some of our environmental issues. So thank you for the opportunity for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Karen brought up a issue of the state budget, and we are on, in the Senate, on a very fast timeline. We need to pass a budget if we're going to meet the April 1st deadline by March 31st. So what happens is that the Senate will pass a budget or a resolution outlining its budget. The Assembly will do the same thing. Then we will have a process to try and resolve the differences between the Senate budget and the Assembly budget. And those will then bring the governor into the mix, because he has proposed a budget that we will be amending. And I think this year there are going to be a lot of amendments to the governor's budget. I will say this, that this year, more than any other year, representatives from the governor's office have stopped me, called me on the phone, asking, is everything going all right? Is there any input that you want to make? So he really has gone out of his way this year to talk to individual legislators. I'm going to recognize Peter and then John Pavasek to give their kind of annual reports, and then we're off to the races.
Thank you, Senator. I'll try and be somewhat brief. The first thing I think I really should do is acknowledge the tremendous progress that has been made over the past 12 months on the water quality issue on Long Island. Thanks in no small part to a lot of people in this room. I think when we met last time, the executive budget had already been released, so we knew that the governor had added $2 million for wastewater innovative technology. He budgeted 2 and the legislature added 1, so we had $3 million in state funding by late last spring, and then by May, I guess, the governor had been talking to local officials, and I don't see Supervisor Throneholt, but she had had direct communications with the governor, and he tasked Commissioner Martens with coming down here and holding a series of hearings. Many of you were good enough to testify and provide input, so the governor became personally engaged and made this a priority. And then in October, that culminated with an announcement at Oakdale of the results of all of that work. And more importantly, he announced the availability of $383 million in funding to address water quality issues on Long Island, in addition to the work that's being done by Suffolk County, the town of Southampton, and Stony Brook University using the $3 million in the Environmental Protection Fund. What the governor has sought to do is to obtain federal funding, to address needs that would not otherwise have been addressed, and some of them are very, very stark and I guess historic. One of them being the Forge River, and this announcement that there is $196 million available to create a wastewater treatment facility down in the community of Mastic Beach, only made possible because of the cooperation of the town of Brookhaven, which has a available site near Brookhaven Airport for that facility. And the creation of the State Center for Clean Water Technology, an idea that was talked up by Supervisor Throneholt, where we will be trying to develop the next generation of effective single-family wastewater treatment systems. At the same time, Suffolk County is now piloting individual septic systems and holding lotteries and awarding homeowners funding to do that kind of work. All these things took place in the last 12 months. It's almost unbelievable how much progress has been made, in large part because of people in this room, and some of whom are not with us. I thought we should acknowledge that. At DEC, we have been very, very busy and continue to be very busy with post-Sandy shoreline restoration projects. The governor was very successful in bringing back, I think, $62 billion in federal disaster recovery funding, and we're now in the process of trying to implement projects. If those of you who are familiar with the village of Mastic Beach and the barrier island across it, from it, runs from Smith Point County Park to Rich's Inlet, the dune structure there, after the storm, looked like somebody had taken a rolling pin and just flattened it into the bay. And the very first large project is underway there now. It's a very amazing thing to see. We also have important projects being planned very close to fruition in downtown Montauk and the city of Long Beach. We have contracts pending for dune restoration in the western portion of Fire Island. We have some new challenges. The southern pine beetle has been detected on Long Island. It's a huge, huge challenge for us. John is going to go into it in a little bit more detail than I will. We have made tremendous progress over the past year at the Pine Barrens Commission. John will detail in our efforts to try and advance a multi-pronged fire protection and fire response strategy. We've done a really good job of incorporating the volunteer fire community with support from the Suffolk County legislators. We have a plan for a new brush truck fire training facility in Yatnak. We made progress there. The governor's budget, the senator mentioned, the governor has again proposed an increase in the Environmental Protection Fund, I think $10 million from $162 to $172 million. He has again funded the Suffolk County Clean Water Initiative at $3 million and has proposed an increase of almost $4 million for open space acquisitions. So the budget holds good things for issues that are of importance to people here. So that's just a brief overview of things we have underway at DEC. I can talk for an hour about the things that we've been doing every day. As far as the southern pine beetle issue goes, we are working on parallel tracks, both to try to arrest the beetle or suppress the beetle during the cold weather, since it will not travel now, but it will start to travel as soon as the weather gets a little bit warmer. That's kind of a short-term initiative, even as we try and derive a long-term plan and find long-term resources. It's going to be with us forever. We have a new obligation, a new responsibility to be monitoring conditions in the forested areas on an ongoing basis, and probably, for decades and decades. It's not something that we're doing now. It's something we really need to do. It's going to require resources. We're undertaking both suppression activities to address areas that are already infested and preventive activities in the forest. All of those have tremendous costs, so we're just coming to grips with that. We're trying to get federal forest health funding from the United States Department of Agriculture. Those efforts appear to be reaching fruition, but that's going to be an evolving situation that I hope you'll all be paying attention to. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Chairman.
Thanks, Peter. So I'll just jump in first on the southern pine beetle response. I think that's been front and center, one of the biggest issues. So the commission is working cooperatively, especially with DEC and its forest health unit. So we're working with the regional office very closely, and the forest health unit, which is comprised of foresters and entomologists in Albany, the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Cornell Cooperative Extension, State Parks, Suffolk County Parks, New York State Department of Transportation, National Park Service, Brookhaven Lab, and the towns, including the towns represented here today, including the town of Brookhaven. So it's a multi-pronged effort. Part of the issue here is not every area that's identified through aerial reconnaissance, which is the primary and most efficient method of detecting areas of suspected as having southern pine beetle infestations. Not all of those areas actually have southern pine beetle, and even when they do, what's found sometimes is that the southern pine beetle is self-extinguishing that area and does not require any further treatment. But that still requires labor, requires trained personnel. We have 4 trained personnel in our office in the commission, but we're a small entity, and we're working on a daily basis to assist some of the other agencies and go out and do this ground truthing, which then helps support the suppression effort. Unfortunately, the main way of suppressing the southern pine beetle is to cut infested trees. The trees are essentially going to die anyway. The southern pine beetle is very aggressive. It will kill a tree in 2 to 4 months. So we've been seeing damage occurring, which has just occurred within the last year or two. One of the most dramatic outbreaks was over at Wortham National Wildlife Refuge, where several hundred acres of pitch pines were destroyed over the last year. Connecticut State Park. But basically, it's been detected in Suffolk County from western Suffolk County near the Nassau-Suffolk border, and out to Hampton Bays, where suppression activities are ongoing right now. We're also hoping to get some flights up when the weather allows to further characterize what's going on the Twin Forks. But as Peter alluded to, this is going to be a lifetime effort to deal with this beetle. It's not an invasive species. It's not an alien species from overseas. It's actually native to the southern United States. And because of global warming and climate change, it has been clawing its way northward. It was detected in the Jersey pinelands, the counterpart to our pine barren, about 10 years ago, and it's destroyed tens of thousands of acres of pine barrens down there. In addition, we're engaged in training, public education, and outreach, and assisting in the suppression efforts wherever we can. Also, in regard to stewardship, we have an ecological services agreement with a contractor. We're working with the major landowning agencies to undertake prescribed fire activities and other ecological management activities. We're hoping to move ahead with the first project this year, which will be in the Flanders Riverside area of Southampton Town. In addition, as Peter mentioned, we're working on the land use plan amendments. The last time the plan was amended, was actually comprehensively amended, was quite a few years ago. This is a series of amendments to the land use chapters 4, 5, and 6. It's been a rather arduous and torturous process of a series of work sessions over the last 4 years. And we're finally at the point where we have, it looks like we've achieved consensus on these, and we're ready to then move to the next step, which will be the environmental secret review, public hearings, public comments and input, and then hopefully by the end of the year, the commission could adopt the refined package of amendments. In regard to wildfire response, we're, as Peter alluded to, we're moving ahead on a multi-pronged approach. We are working with a wildfire community grant that we received from the Northeast Firefighting Compact in the Ridge and Navajo areas. This will serve as a model for other areas. Basically, once this plan is adopted, it will open up that area to additional federal funds, including FEMA hazard mitigation dollars to assist in helping to fireproof that area from future wildfires. So it's a combination of activities on both public lands and things that can be done in residential areas to basically fireproof those areas. We're also doing community outreach on that. As Peter mentioned also, we have been conducting brush truck training exercises over the last several years. Brush trucks are the primary way that our volunteer firefighters attack wildfires here. But there's never been any comprehensive training program here before. In many cases, the only training that a firefighter gets is when they first are in the truck going to a wildfire. So we're trying to do this under controlled conditions. And yeah, some of these trucks, a lot of them are military surplus. They do not have power steering. And one of the things they learn to do is not to have your thumbs wrapped around the truck because you can break your thumbs. So these are some of the things that we're trying to teach firefighters, and we've achieved an historic agreement with Suffolk County to develop a permanent year-round training facility adjacent to its Fire Rescue Emergency Services facility and Suffolk County Fire Academy in Yaphank. So that's the
John, I'm going to bifurcate your presentation. Sure. We'll come back to you. I want to a couple of folks and then come to Supervisor Romaine, who has very exciting announcement to make today. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So let's go. No.
Tell him what it is.
He's well. No. He's well prepared. He even gave me a letter on it right here. So let's get a couple of people. I just want to make a note that today I requested $450,000 to be added to the budget for the southern pine beetle. All right, who's going to? Kevin?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Kevin McDonald, I'm with the Nature Conservancy on Long Island. Senator, it's a pleasure to be here again. How many years is it? Too many.
A lot.
A while.
Not too
But thank you. This is always a good conversation. The crowd has gotten bigger every year. And our main message this year, and you said it earlier, is water quality issue continues and remains a significant challenge. We have a better understanding. We've had, as Peter noted, some recent investments. And he was pointing to the good news, and I was seeing the glass half empty at times where there has been some movement on the issue for sure, and more attention paid, and at different levels of government engaging the issue more constructively. And those of us that are slightly impatient, of course, want to see that momentum continue. A significant opportunity presents itself at this time of the year for the budget in relationship to the Environmental Protection Fund, which, considering the various additional requests that are being made for support for some water quality work that needs to be done, an EPF that was funded at or around $200 million rather than as initially proposed by the governor, I think would be a well-received addition, clearly benefiting Long Island all around, and the extent to which you and your colleagues could enable that to happen on the Senate budget bill, that would be terrific. We would all put it to very good use, I'm sure. Just the 200 on Long Island, but we know the rest of the state needs access to it as well. So that would be really outstanding. The second thing is, you know, we need to continue making the progress on the water quality work that's been done, the budget request that's been made of you for the $5 million for some county and state work that has to be done on nutrient loading and setting new standards so that water quality can be managed is also significant.
We've advanced that forward.
I appreciate that. I know that. You've done a really good job with that.
So we hope it'll get into the budget, but we've made that request.
Yes, I know that, and most of your colleagues in the Senate on Long Island have also supported it, and we're appreciative of that as well. So I'm looking forward to other folks' comments and great ideas, and happy to work on them, and thank you and your distinguished colleagues also representing us here as well. Thank you again.
Thank you. I always say every year that we do good work because everyone here at every level of government and the support that we have in the environmental community is just incredible. And we do things down on Long Island, mostly in Suffolk County, because of the creativity, the energy, and the commitment that we have in the area of the environment.
Thank you. Karen Bluer. Kevin was too modest in terms of some of the efforts that Nature Conservancy has done, and we're one of the groups, and we hope that almost everyone here will be part of a new effort, which probably came out of some of the water partnership working on surface water issues. That's we're temporarily calling the Long Island Water Forum, and it is the initial stages is funded by Nature Conservancy with a consultant, and hopefully it will be a forum where we can come together and discuss many of the things we agree on and those that we don't. So that's one effort. I wanted to mention that in terms of legislation, we've been working with a group that luckily, as Peter mentioned, we have a good deal of money now for surface water issues, but the groundwater issues are out there waiting to be dealt with. We need some serious scientific management by a concentrated body that will pull together all of we have many small issues. As a matter of fact, in our stages of the forum, somebody said it's like an octopus head. We're all working, we have many, many different arms of the octopus working on small issues, but there's no one central head. So we will be coming to you to discuss some of that legislation that we're hoping you will support for groundwater management. And finally, as Open Space Council works mostly in the town of Brookhaven, and we're so proud and excited about the recent legislation that probably many of you know in terms of its groundbreaking in the state. The town of Brookhaven now has a law requiring, instead of the 10 parts per million drinking water standard, a 3 parts per million effluent standard for STPs. Again, it's not broad, it's just between 1,000 and 30,000 GPD, but this is a great step. There's nothing done anything. So, we really thank our supervisor, Ed Romaine, and I think Defend Water, Evan McAllister worked with him and got support from other ways, and it's very exciting. So this is a small step that we hope maybe all the other municipalities will begin looking at. Thanks.
Okay. As you're walking over here to Supervisor Romaine, I just want to say that my vision, energy on picking up where we left off last year is there. So, and I think everyone will be working. We've made more progress, as Peter indicated, than anyone knows on this issue. So, Supervisor?
Well, thank you, Senator, again, for sponsoring this. I look around the room and I understand why Long Island is going in the right direction. A lot of rooms I look around in and I understand why it's going in the wrong direction. This is one room that I see a lot of leadership in trying to redirect where Long Island is going. A couple things. I'll just follow up on the Commons River Plan. We've implemented the Commons River Plan. And as part of that plan, not only did we upzone, not only did we purchase hundreds of acres in the last year or two, but we decided to establish a water quality standard that was stricter, and thank you, Kevin, for helping, and everyone else that helped on that. And that's very important. And just this week, I sent a letter out. This is not the letter for tonight, but I did send a letter out, and you will be getting it. We are joining with our 5 eastern towns and mayors in requesting funding for alternative systems so that those businesses and residents in the Commons River area will be able to meet those standards by employing alternative systems. That's very important. I know the 5 eastern towns made that request with the Mayor's Association. We're joining in that request. And the second thing, which the Senator and I talked about and briefly mentioned with Peter yesterday at Pine Barrens, is the town has requested the state begin to regulate mulch. It's long overdue. We have huge mulch piles in the town of Brookhaven, commercial size, that threaten the health and safety of its nearby residents with mold and spores and airborne pathogens. And some of these, and we're in court with a number of them, and as Tom Talbot will tell you in Middle Island, with mulch mare is one of them. But there's a whole host of them in Yaphank, and East Patchogue, and throughout the town. We're looking to regulate, and the state was prepared to regulate mulch. Regulations that they did not promulgate in light of Sandy, but I think the time is right to move forward and to protect the residents of the town. The state regulates compost. We think they should regulate mulch, and we're urging that very strongly in a letter that we've addressed the Senator, who's discussed it with us and been extremely supportive, as he has been, of most environmental initiatives, and for that I thank the Senator.
Dick Amper. Dick Amper.
Thank you. I think sometimes we think politicians are prone to exaggeration, but in talking about this forum and the work that the state delegation has done over the years, that it is simply irrefutable that Senator LaValle and Assemblyman Thiel accomplished the greatest environmental achievement in the history of this island when they introduced and passed and supported the Community Preservation Fund. And I just want to take 30 seconds to say this effort to reduce dollars to protect water, to preserve open space and farmland has been arguably the most successful preservation program of its kind in this country. We are celebrating this month having arrived not at the $250 million we were laughed at for suggesting might be produced by the end of the program, but $1 billion for this purpose and having preserved 10,000 acres of open space and farmland. And Senator LaValle, and would you please pass on to your colleague, Assemblyman Thiel, this is a truly extraordinary accomplishment, and it tells us that there's nothing we can't do. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you. Laura, you want to talk about our extension moving forward? That it also involves Assemblyman Palumbo. And he may actually claim initial credit for what you're going to talk about.
Building off of what Big Amber had mentioned, we have reached the $1 billion mark, and I think that there's still a lot more that needs to happen. So, working with several people in this room, 3 of us have kind of attempted a new bill, new legislation. We don't have a bill number yet. But instead of just focusing on land preservation, which we have in the past, we are going to be opening up a new category, or proposing to open up a new category of water quality. And that would include wastewater treatment, aquatic habitat restoration, and pollution prevention projects. One of the things that we are also doing is, currently the CPF law expires on December 31st, 2030. So we want to do a 20-year extension. So it then would expire in 2050. And for the water quality, we are proposing a maximum of 20% to be used on water quality. And this obviously is something that the towns can do, or municipalities can do. If they choose not to, they don't have to, but at least provides a funding mechanism for the towns that want to address water quality through the community preservation fund. We've done some initial estimates for this proposed legislation. If we do extend it to 2050 and include the water quality portion, we will raise $2.7 billion additional dollars. Of that, $1.7 billion will be for land preservation and approximately $540 million for water quality. So obviously, as we all know, the towns have different amounts that they raise every year. Just on an estimate, I think East Hampton would raise in the roughage, I think, of like $5 to $7 million additionally per year for water quality projects. So that's kind of, every town would be different. So at this point, it's a proposal that we've been working on, and we've been working on it with a lot of people in this room. And I think it's, hopefully with your help, we can move it forward. We can also change it if need be. But it's just a way to address a lot of the concerns and issues that have been brought up at this roundtable over the years, as well as additional forums for addressing water quality.
So as other people are talking, you might deliberate and cogitate about this. As Laura said, we have not introduced it yet, but we're very close to introducing it. So we need some feedback. Bob?
Thank you, Senator, and thank all the elected officials for being here to listen to us and for everybody for attending. I want to echo and express my same support as Dick Amber. I think that the Community Preservation Fund has fundamentally changed the future of the East End, and for those of us that have been working toward the protection of it. Had that fund not come to be, we would be in a very different place today. So I thank you personally for that on behalf of the organization. And also, I don't want to take too much time to say what's already been said, but I do want to reinforce the importance of the water quality issue for us. The $5 million budget ask we very much support and thank you for. We want to see that funding can help us go to accomplish a management plan, nutrient loading estimates where we need them, as well as the science-based criteria and standards that help us deal with nutrients in the estuarine environment, which have been long awaited. So we hope that this is a first step toward that process, and thank you. Two other things. One, I think it underlies much of what we're talking about is, as you well know, the State Department of Environmental Conservation has so many responsibilities, by some estimates, 100% more responsibilities than they did even 7 to 10 years ago. Their current budget is something like 25 to 30% what it used to be, and as an old agency guy myself, it's just impossible for them to do what's asked. We have a clean water action endeavor that's absolutely necessary. They have a big piece of that responsibility. We have a New York State Ocean Action Plan with 200 specific recommendations, a really outstanding plan with 1 or 2 people really left to carry the burden of pulling that off. And one of the things which is particularly of interest to us, you may know that in late December, the state issued its updated species of greatest conservation need across the state. Many of these species are not what you would think of as a piping plover or a least tern. They include oysters and horseshoe crabs and hard clams and black duck, and many of the things that we believe are part of the natural background wildlife that was always going to be here. That's a huge undertaking, and according to the state, if we don't move on those issues,
in the next 10 years, something like 180 of these species, many of which we grew up thinking was just always going to be here, are going to see a precipitous decline. The state really has very little resources to go after that. So part of the effort to move forward on all of these initiatives is getting an agency back in shape, able to do the things that we ask it to do. And I know it's a very difficult thing to do in the budget process, but it's clearly time to start rebuilding that agency. And I know that you care about this and can help, and I hope that you will. And I know that Assemblyman Engelbright has said something along those lines as well. Slightly on it, and this is like my last point, there's a smaller bill that's out there that's very important to us locally, and that's your bill and Assemblyman Thiel and Engelbright's, which is S367, about allowing local governments to play a larger role in the monitoring and enforcement of local rules regarding sand mines. We have situations in a sole source aquifer here where sand mines get closer and closer to the aquifer every year, and there are other attendant projects going on those sand mines, composting mulch facilities. We think this is very advantageous to local government's ability to control those uses. And I just came across something the other day. In 1978, the town of Southampton wrote in its comprehensive plan that the regulation and enforcement of the future of sand mines in the town was a huge issue they needed to go after back then. So it's certainly larger today. But anyway, just in sum, again, thanks so much for the budget ask. We think that's a great place to start. I think the CPF is evidence of what aspirational vision can do, and we look forward to working with you in the future toward all of these things, including any way that we can help to support clean water action and rebuilding the State Department of Environmental Conservation.
I fully concur with you that we need to rebuild the agency. I would say to you, and I was just saying to Peter today, that I think Commissioner Martens is doing a great job, my own personal feeling. Peter's doing an outstanding job as our regional director, but they need people. They need people. So, we've got to support them. Let me go, all right, Adrian, and then we're going to go to Assemblyman Palumbo after that.
I will not be redundant either, so I'm not going to talk about the water quality issue since it was already very well covered. Once again, I do want to say, though, thank you for this roundtable. Thank you for your legacy of work. When we hear numbers about $1 billion, it's actually unmatched throughout the state of New York and maybe throughout the country. So your work has led to a legacy of just leaving this island a better place. So thank you so much for that, which it doesn't even begin to do it justice. 3 quick things. One is that good news. This year, for the first time, the DEC was allocated in the state budget a $150,000 line item for Long Island for the safe disposal of pharmaceutical drugs from long-term care facilities. This came out of a roundtable with legislator Cara Hahn had organized when the long-term care facility said to us, we need to get our stuff picked up. It's one of those little niches that wasn't really addressed properly. Anyway, we went to the state allocated $150,000 for Long Island. The DEC picks it up from long-term care facilities. This is the first time it was done, which was February. I heard over 52 or 55 cases of drugs, instead of being flushed, were taken to Covanta and burned. Covanta took them for free. Why am I saying that? Well, one is, it's a good news story, I'm going to throw it in, but also because we want to keep that in the budget. It's in the DEC general ops portion of their budget. This year, there's $150,000 again, so thank you. But then there's another $150,000 in the aid to municipalities portion of the DEC budget. That needs to be moved out of there and put it to the general ops budget so this program can be continued and expanded. So that's one thing. The other thing is that for the first time too, after many years of work, there's a new Oceans Protection Plan that just came out. It's a really good plan. It took, I think, 8 years to make. So we're asking for the line item in the EPF to be expanded so that we can start implementing the great suggestions in that plan. It's not just for the ocean, it's for Long Island Sound and the estuaries, Peconic Estuary and the South Shore Estuary as well. So the state has worked really hard on this, the DEC, the DOS, and stakeholders, and now we'd like to implement it. And I would be remiss if I didn't put a plug in for the microbeads legislation that, as I'm sure you know, does have a Senate and Assembly sponsor, and we'd love for you to also help champion that as well for our waters. Thank you so much.
Okay. Assemblyman Anthony Palumbo.
How are you, folks? I want to thank you all for coming. This is my second forum. As many of you may know, I was elected in 2013, so these are very informative and very helpful to me. I was a lawyer in my previous life, which is just generally a glorified librarian, but after coming to these, I've really learned a lot, and that, of course, with the counsel of Senator LaValle has been, it's been a tremendous learning curve. And just to further comment on what Senator LaValle had alluded to, that the Peconic Fund is just, it's just a wonderful, I think, an incredibly innovative piece of legislation. Dick said the same thing as well, Dick Amper. And that was the joke was last year, my first budget, we're grueling through very long days, and it's probably about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting there, and Fred Thiel's he's about 15 feet from me. He's across the aisle and a couple of rows up. And I said, you know, we were contemplating, the senator and I got through a first-time homebuyer exemption from the Peconic Fund in the town of Southold, and the South Fork has it as well as Shelter Island, Riverhead. Not yet. They need to, when they become a little more solvent in that fund, we'll do it there. But that was essentially just, I think, how these things come to fruition is when you're a little bit tired, you start kicking them around. And I just had commented to Fred, I said that, you know, why don't we, with all the drinking water issue, it would be nice to have our own pot of funds, just like we do with that. And I know Fred had been thinking about it. If he were here, he'd probably deny that it was my idea anyway. And he beat me to Newsday with the press release. But ultimately, I'm only teasing. But that's where he says, you know, maybe 1% for drinking water, or we can have a gradual schedule, because we're, of course, running out of development rights to purchase, which is a wonderful thing, and these funds are doing very well. So I certainly am going to, we're going to make sure that moves forward as quickly as possible, because it's a great idea, and we'll figure out certainly what the ratios should be as far as how much should go to drinking water, but that I think it will be a critical issue for many years to come. And that income stream, in addition to the state funding, will be terrific, because I think that's the biggest concern, is that we always have to come up, or the local officials have to come up, and we have to try and beg, borrow, and steal from as much as we can in the state budget to try and deal with these somewhat local issues, fighting against the New York City contingency, who is concerned about it, but not nearly as concerned as we are. So I think that's a wonderful thing, and the senator is once again taking the lead, and we'll certainly be following you, Senator.
Thank you. Okay, who else? John?
So John Halsey from the Peconic Land Trust, and I want to echo the thanks to you, Senator LaValle, and to Fred Thiel for the vision. So many of us were working very hard in the late 90s with you to make the Community Preservation Fund a reality, and it is just extraordinary. So we, of course, are going to work with you for its continued effectiveness in the years to come and beyond the current 2030 end point. I did want to also thank you, Senator LaValle and Assemblyman Fred Thiel, for your tremendous support to our efforts, the Peconic Land Trust efforts, to assure that protected farmland is accessible and affordable for food production farmers. Now, we're in a situation where, especially on the South Fork, protected farmland is trading at as high as $300,000 per acre. So the average value right now of protected farmland is about $120,000 an acre. So in order for us to assure that this land is actually available to farmers, the original purpose of the purchase of development rights programs that even predate the Community Preservation Fund, which Senator LaValle had a very big role in creating the original enabling legislation for in the New York State. We really have to, come up with some new tools. And we've had a wonderful partnership with Southampton Town, and I want to acknowledge our town council members, Bridget Fleming and Brad Bender. We've, I think, come up with a really unique and innovative way to address this problem in Southampton Town. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for making it a possibility. And along the lines of these high real estate values, we continue to have a challenge with the New York State inheritance tax. Notwithstanding reforms that were made in the last year to begin to create parity between the exclusions that the federal tax code provides landowners. But we have a real problem with the current legislation or the current law in New York State, where if you happen to have assets 5% greater than the exclusion, there is a rollback. So that if your property is worth substantially more than what the exclusion provides, you can lose any exemption from the New York State inheritance tax. And so that's a tweak that we would hope to work with Senator LaValle and Assemblyman Thiel in the years to come to try to fix. So again, thank you for hosting this gathering, which has been a great meeting of the minds in many instances. And well, let's hope for warmer weather.
Okay. Yeah, John? And then just pass the phone to Adrian.
Thank you, Senator. I want to also echo thanks to you and to your colleagues, both at the local level and the state legislative colleagues, with regard to this forum and all you've done through the years to help protect Long Island's environment, particularly the extent of the incredible list that you tried to write out, all the things that you've had some hand in playing, and certainly deeply appreciate your steadfast support in this regard. I want to make two comments, totally different issues, if I may. First, just wearing the Preserve Plum Island hat for a second, if I might. The Preserve Plum Island Coalition, as the name suggests, is a consortium of about 60 organizations, conservation organizations, civic, business organizations, as well as individuals who care deeply about the future of Plum Island. And in that regard, I want to just provide a brief update, and most importantly say to you that we hope to come back to you in the next month or so and meet with you to go over some specific strategies and ideas that we have that really relate to state level action that deals with Plum Island. Although it's obviously owned by the federal government, there's a number of things we think the state can do in that regard. Just to provide an update for those that may not be familiar, is that Save the Sound, which is one of the organizations, a key organization a member of the coalition, has filed a 60-day notice and to sue both the GSA, General Services Administration, and the Department of Homeland Security based on the fact we believe that both those agencies didn't comply with the consultation provisions in the Federal Endangered Species Act, mostly consulted with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service when they prepared the environmental impact statement for the island. And that will be moving forward. And I don't know if you've had a chance, if you go on the website, the Preserve Plum Island Coalition website, but that suit is available for reading, and it's really very well done, very well written. We have continued to engage individuals at both the GSA and Department of Homeland Security. We've had several meetings with them and trying to explore other options. We continue to advocate for the adoption of the legislation at the federal level to repeal the legislation that was approved back in 2008 that has put us on a path to have the island sold to a private entity. We believe, of course, very much that the island should be retained as a public asset. The position of the coalition has been as a national wildlife refuge, but we're open and amenable to other types of ideas that may achieve basically the same outcome. And that's really it, just an update for that. I want to switch gears if I can and just pile on with this issue about water to broaden out something very quickly.
Can I? Yeah. Let me just say in that regard, Plum Island, Governor is very interested in preservation of this, called me up, said, you know, if there's anything I can do. So I didn't know whether you knew of his personal interest in this.
We do know of his personal interest, and we're deeply appreciative of that, and we'll be following up on that with his office and have it. To take advantage of that most certainly, actually in the coming weeks. So, The other issue is one that we talked about water quality. I just want to throw one specific idea to you for your consideration. I see Joe here, and I'm delighted because it really relates to something the town of Riverhead is doing, and that is water reuse. One of the strategies I think that really needs to be given a much closer look at on Long Island in terms of dealing with water quality issues is taking highly treated effluent from sewage treatment plants and reusing it instead of allowing it to just be discharged into coastal water bodies or back into the ground, but to use it. And a lot of places in the country do that to the tune of more than 2 billion gallons a day. In Florida and the southwest parts of the country do that. And Riverhead is poised to be the first, I think the first entity out of Long Island to do that in 2016. Highly treated effluent will come from the Riverhead sewage treatment plant. It will be pumped a very short distance to the Indian Island Golf Course next door. And consultants to the town of Riverhead indicate that in one fell swoop, that effort will remove 1 ton of nitrogen per year that will no longer go into the Peconic estuary, but will be utilized for plant growth. And will displace 63 million gallons of water that otherwise would have to be pumped by Suffolk County to irrigate the golf course. So it's a, comment about win-win. It's a win-win situation all around. We would urge you to consider as part of the budget, maybe as part of EPF, to take a look at a feasibility study for Long Island. There needs to be some type of comprehensive, overarching look at the island. We've got about 126 golf courses. We've got several dozen sewage treatment plants. You've got industrial parks with landscaping. There's great opportunities being able, out there, we think, to be able to utilize water reuse in a much more comprehensive fashion. We hope that in the budget process that you might consider just a small amount of money set aside so that we can take a closer look at the logistical and financial issues relating to reuse. Article 15 in the state, the ANCON law is on the books. Water reuse is allowed and legal, permitted in the state of New York. DEC needs to develop the rules and regulations. I think they still have not done that, but that's one particular work product needs to be done. But something that would really be wonderful is if there'd be some type of island-wide feasibility study to look at opportunities and to try to take what Riverhead's going to be doing and apply it on a much broader basis. I think there'd be significant positive results for water quality, both on the coast and dealing with groundwater, as Karen indicated before.
John, I'm not sure I could help you unless it will improve my golf game.
It most certainly will.
Yes.
Jody, is that true?
Yes, John, we want to recruit you to write that chapter for the Long Island Groundwater Resources Management Plan that the Commission for Aquifer Protection is working on. Because we want to look at water reuse.
Okay, we'll talk. I'm happy to chat with you more about it.
Hi, I'm Andrea Spilka. I represent the Southampton Town Civic Coalition. But I think right now I'm speaking for all the civics, the local little people around here. First of all, thank you for everyone in the room for what you're doing. But I want to come back to 2 things that were mentioned earlier. One is more money for staff for the DEC. It's essential. I'd also put in a pitch at the Suffolk County level for more money for the Department of Health Services, especially their environmental division. Nothing, things keep getting worse. We keep saying it's a priority, and yet money and staff keep getting tighter. It's from where we sit, it's a problem. But the other thing has to do with standards, and it also goes back to money and staff. And that is the fact that we're fighting development all the time. We're the folks that, we try to ramp up people to come out and to go to town board meetings and fight development where we see that it's going to be problematic. I don't think any of the civics that I know of really say you can't do anything. But the truth is there's a lot going on, and what's happening because there aren't real standards, the developers can come in and say, you know what? We'll put in a sewage treatment system, but give us, in exchange for that, give us all this extra density. Well, it shouldn't be that way. We really need, I guess they agree, and I'm so glad, thank you. There needs to be standards, so that's not the case. We're fighting a very uphill battle that we don't really need to be fighting, especially when at every level, everyone says nothing is more important than water quality. So anything everyone that you can do, and the folks in this room, I know you work hard on these issues all the time, but this is one that would really make a difference at the very, very local level. Thank you very much.
Okay. County Legislator Hahn, my county legislator.
Thank you, Senator. I don't want to take too much time repeating what so many people have said. However, I cannot continue without thanking you for your leadership on all of these issues. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone in the room who's here, who comes here every year, who comes down to the legislature, and advocates on behalf of all the people of Suffolk County, on behalf of our environment. Thank you for all that you do. You know, again, I want to move on and talk about things that people haven't talked about, but you can't not talk about water quality, right? So, otherwise, you know, it would be hard. But I really am so thrilled with the movement we've made, you know, in just a really short amount of time. I remember Kevin talking about alternative treatment, so, you know, yeah, and then people just being like, well, what are you talking about? And I made it, you know, I talked about it, and people saying, why are you talking about this? This is not sexy. But you know what?
It is.
It is. It kind of is now, and people want to talk about it. And we went to Rhode Island and to Massachusetts to see these systems in the ground and hear from their counties on how Barnstable County, Massachusetts, and how, you know, they're putting them in the ground, they're working, and it's making a difference. And while we cannot sewer Suffolk County, all of Suffolk County, nor would we want to, we are making gains on these alternative systems that I'm really surprised that we're able to talk about it in this manner already. There's so much more to do, clearly, and there's so much more money that's needed, unfortunately, to make, you know, real effective change. But we are doing it, working towards it, and we can actually say that the county government, the state government, the federal government are all working together, talking about large dollar amounts that are being committed to this very unsexy issue. And, you know, it's really a great thing. But there's so much more to do, you know, and you're right. Okay, so staff. So, you know, I had put in a bill to have our health department test for 1,4-dioxane. You know, we had to add extra staff. We had cut, you know, too many. We lost too many in our health department. And so staffing is a really important issue, and money is what it takes to get more staff. And so, you know, we're having discussions about how do we find creative ways to get more dollars for these issues, to bring in revenues in ways that are acceptable to folks. And we need to continue to have those discussions, and we need support at all levels of government for new ideas, new ways to bring in dollars to make these changes, to increase the staff, to buy the land that we still need to preserve. There's so much more that still needs to be preserved. And I want to echo, you know, some of the microbeads. I have a microbead piece of legislation here at the local level, and I think it really does need to move on the state level. I have and then just to move on to another topic that hasn't come up, I have a toxic toy bill that really needs to move on the state level. It's just unacceptable that there are toys on the shelves that contain benzene, lead, mercury, antimony, arsenic, cadmium, cobalt for toys directed at children. It's just really shouldn't be happening, and we need your support on the state level to make sure that that does not continue.
That will pass in this term.
Oh, excellent.
That's my crystal ball prediction.
Thank you.
I think it will.
Thank you. That is a huge thing for you to say tonight.
I think, yeah, that comes out of, I'm the ranker on consumer affairs, and that's gone through our committee, and I think it did last year, but I think it should hopefully fly right through in our house.
I have it on the county level, but it really needs to happen at the state level, and I thank you for saying that, and I'm glad I brought that up. And again, pharmaceutical take back, every pharmacy needs to be taking it back. And that needs to be done at the state level. They need to be required to do that, because especially here. Again, I want to thank you for willingness to do this every year, willingness to actually then go and act on the things that we talk about, because you really have a tremendous record of taking what is said here and acting on it. And so thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. David Colon from the Suffolk County Planning Commission. Just two things I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. One on stormwater runoff, the other on renewable energy. On stormwater runoff, we've been working with the towns as well as developers to encourage them to use green methods for stormwater runoff. And my vice chair on the Planning Commission, Adrienne Esposito, and her organization, TCE, have been real leaders on this. And one of the issues that we face is green methodology of stormwater runoff is more effective for reducing pollution and allows nature to do its thing, as opposed to hardscaping and concrete runoff protection measures. But it's a little bit more expensive. And however, the benefit is significant. So if we could see state incentive programs to encourage municipalities and developers to use green methods for stormwater runoff, I think we'd see a real explosion in it. We've been pushing this for, a couple of years, right, Adrienne?
Yes.
And we're definitely seeing more and more development using it, and that's great, but it would be great for our surface waters, et cetera, if we can have more and more developers using it when there is development, more towns requiring it. We're going to work on model legislation for the towns on that. It would be great if some of you would at least take a look at perhaps an incentive program from the state level for green methods for stormwater runoff. My second point with regard to renewable energy, we've been pushing obviously our solar code, which all the townships in Suffolk County have adopted, and now has become the standard for the state. And NYSERDA has taken that and is now the permitting code that we've put in place here in Suffolk County is now the state code. Obviously, the idea there is to increase green jobs and, of course, promote clean energy, moving away from fossil fuel, et cetera. But I wanted to update you on the fact that we now have a wind code that municipalities here are considering. Supervisor Romaine has led the way in adopting that in Brookhaven with Councilman Giglio's leadership, as well as Supervisor Walter. Riverhead is about to adopt the wind code. So something to look at as we roll that out around Suffolk County would be whether that makes sense to take that to the state-wide level. And the most recent one is geothermal. We just put together a geothermal model code. Supervisor Romaine and I and County Executive Balone announced it in November, I think it was. Town of Brookhaven is adopting it, and other towns are starting to look at it. For those towns and villages that are interested in looking at the geothermal code, PSEG has a financial incentive to help the towns with the adoption of that code, which is expiring at the end of March, so I'm hopeful they're going to extend that a little bit to give the towns and villages around the county and Nassau as well an opportunity to really take a hard look, because we think that's important for the next set of renewable energy, and doing that in a environmentally sensitive way, which is the way we came up with it. The last thing I'll mention is work with Supervisor Romaine on this utility-size solar, which is a big issue. How do we site utility solar in a way that communities, can in places where it makes sense for the communities. Obviously, there's been issues in Shoreham, as you're well aware of, as well as elsewhere, where LIPA or PSEG has said, we're going to put solar here, and the community isn't ready for that and isn't welcoming it. So we're working on trying to create places where it will be acceptable to the community. So the next round comes around, the developers who want to do this, and we want to be supportive of renewable energy, we just want to put it in the places that make the most sense. So just want to make sure that's on your radar screen. Thank you.
Thank you, David. At the very beginning, I told you there was bad news, and I had good news. And the good news has come. Steve Engelbright is my assembly member and a friend. And many people in this room worked underground, behind the scenes, directly to help him become the chairman of the YenCon committee in the Assembly. This is huge for us here in Suffolk County, Long Island, and the state of New York. There is no one more eminently qualified to be the chairman. There is no one who has greater passion and feeling, and he and I have together had some tearful moments of passion about things. So without further ado, I give you our chairman of the Assembly Environment Conservation Committee, Assemblyman Steve Engelbright.
Thank you, Senator. It's really gratifying to have a chance to enhance my service to the environmental community of this region and the state. Among those who worked behind the scenes was my senator, who was pulling for me, and I just want to say thank you. Your collegiality and your encouragement were very meaningful, and we will build on what has already been a 30-year-long relationship of working together to do many good things, and we're going to do some more good things. As I look around the room, I see so many people who I've had the privilege of working with in the past, and I wanted to be here this evening to hear your thoughts as you're sharing them with the Senator, and thank you for inviting me to join into your listening. You used to call these things hearings, but they're really listenings, and I feel very privileged to be here at the Senator's invitation. Ken, thank you for your friendship. I look forward to working with you as we go forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah. Marianne.
I usually don't need a microphone. Somebody wants.
That's all right, but just wait till you, because we have people that are taking pictures of you.
Marianne Johnston, president of APCO. You know, every time I come to this, I learn more and I have less to say, which is, frankly, a new thing. All right? One of the concerns I have is what John raised, you know, the reuse function. And we do so much in Suffolk County to preserve our drinking water and our surface waters. And we live next to a county that's doing nothing. And that needs to be addressed at a state level, because they take all of their water is publicly treated, and they are fully publicly serviced, with rare exception to a few things on the North Shore. So all of that water gets dumped into our ocean, which is another concern. We're dumping fresh water into our oceans, and that's not acceptable either. So one of the things that I'm looking for is for us to be really looking at reusing water. That if we build a sewer plant, let's not build it to technology that's mid-20th century, but let's use 21st century technology. Let's reuse that water. Let's find appropriate sites. Let's mandate it at a state level. And that's the way we're going to move forward, so that we're not a ghost land with empty beaches, with nothing but garbage and polluted water in our streams. So that, to me, is a critical thing. Then when we look at the development that's happening in our hydrogeological zones, we need to say no. to those who simply refuse to use the best available technology. That includes agencies of the state of New York, such as OTB, which is planning to put a facility in Special Hydrogeological Zone 3, the most sensitive zone anywhere on the island, and wants to use cesspools and septics, and we're saying no to that. We're hopeful going to say no to it in its entirety, but we do need the state's help. So I thank you for listening.
As I walk across the room, I just want to take an opportunity.
County, just let me get County Legislator Krupski, and then we'll come back to you, Jody. You have the microphone. Stay there. Let's be efficient. Go ahead.
Okay, I would just like to thank you, Senator LaValle, and all of our legislators, Assemblyman Colombo and Legislator Krupski, for your support with the town of Riverhead and all of our endeavors always. And we are very excited about our $25 million sewage treatment plant upgrade that will be able to put the water onto the adjoining golf course, and we think it'll be beneficial for the golf course, and we know it'll be beneficial for the bays and for the Peconic estuary. So we thank you for that. And any money, the county gave us $8 million towards this sewer upgrade, so we are very grateful. And Senator LaValle, we know you are working on getting us money for the Enterprise Park at Calverton subdivision to upgrade that sewage plant, so we thank you very much. And we hope that Riverhead, as the test case and the model site for this type of reuse of the sewage water that comes out of the plants, could be implemented throughout the county, seeing as there are several sewage treatment plants that are directly adjacent to several golf courses within the county. So I think it's great. The program will be implemented in 2016, where we will actually be discharging onto the golf course, and we hope that the results will be positive so that it will be an example to be used throughout the county and throughout the state. One of the things that I have concern about, and I have invited our elected officials to on a forum on March 21st, is our manufactured home parks within our communities. We have homes that are being abandoned. We have raw sewage underneath the homes that are 70 feet away from inlets into the Peconic Bay and into the estuaries. And they're not currently, in speaking to Walter Hilbert from the Health Department, they're not currently regulated, because if they were to meet the current standards for the county, then you would be pushing all of these people out of their homes, because there's just not enough room to put in a standard sanitary system. So I'm working with Glynis Berry and her community group that she has, where we would cluster a sanitary system to serve all of these manufactured home parks in a not a substandard system, where these tanks, when they fill up, they're just disconnecting them and dropping a new tank and then putting it, I mean, houses are sinking into these sanitary systems, and there really is nobody watching what's going on. So we are going to be having a forum on March 21st at Hotel Indigo at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have invited all of you, and I hope that you will be able to attend. You will all have an opportunity to speak and come up with any ideas about what you might have to help these manufactured home parks come into the health, safety, and welfare that they should be in living within these communities, and holding the owners of these communities accountable for ignoring the environmental issues that exist. So I applaud you for your efforts, and I look forward to working with you and trying to help these situations in these parks that are in such close proximity to the estuaries and the bays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While Legislator Krupski is talking, John Pavasek, you can start getting ready to finish your report. We had to bifurcate it because it looked like you were going downstream pretty far.
You can take your time, John. I'll be a while. I want to start by thanking Senator LaValle. And I didn't know Assemblyman Palumbo was the brains behind the organization here, coming up with that idea, but thank you for that. It's beautiful.
So he claims.
And I'm a lowly member on the NCON committee, but I didn't want to say it in case Steve showed up, because he's the chair. So.
And also, you know, Fred Thiel and his work with the 2% transfer tax, it has made such a big difference on the East End. Really, without that, it would have been a completely different place. The towns were doing their own thing, bonding money, trying to preserve land. This gave us a regular stream to work with. The only concern is, in some towns, there's a bounty of money coming in, and they're really blessed with just like a fountain that keeps flowing. And that's good, and it's a good thing. Other towns are not as fortunate to have that kind of revenue stream come in.
Yeah.
There is the concern on the North Fork. There's a tremendous amount of unprotected farmland, and there's a lot of development pressure. And if we don't act, that this farmland will be paved over, and once it's paved over, we will not recover it. And this is if you look at today, and people think, well, it's just a bunch of farmers, it's not really important. But really, if you look at the next generation, and the generation after that, you've got millions of people living on Long Island. You're looking at long-term food security and long-term food safety. And we better pay attention and preserve that farmland. So to extend this to 2050 is a great idea, but we still have to keep the focus on preserving land, because once that's gone, you know, once piece by piece by piece, it gets eaten away, it gets eroded away, we're going to lose it. And we should also, I think, when we're having this discussion about extending the 2% real estate tax, I'm almost done, John, don't worry, that we should reach out to the leadership in our western town of Brookhaven, as this would provide them. And I think this is a tried and true method of preserving land, whether it's open space or farmland. Reach out to Brookhaven and have them pass the same law. They could take advantage. They would have a secure funding stream also for preservation.
Brookhaven has to go to referendum only.
Of course, sure.
Yeah.
So I want to add something to what Councilwoman Giglio said. You know, Riverhead is leading the way with their wastewater treatment and putting it on the county golf course. And we have been having those discussions at DPW how we could do that at more locations. The county operates about 30 different sewage treatment plants. There's only one thing that prevents all that, and it's the $24 million that Riverhead's spending. So these upgrades are extremely costly. I believe Riverhead isn't doing this voluntarily. I think they had to make an upgrade. They're doing it at a state-of-the-art level, and they should be admired and commended for it. But to do this requires a lot of willpower and a lot of money, and it is definitely the way to go. As far as water quality goes, you know, I grew up in Cutchogue, and you really, if you grow up on the East End, and you go out in the creek or you go out in the bay, and you eat the shellfish that you find right there, and you really take it for granted. And it's so important to keep that quality of life going. You want to have your children and grandchildren have the same opportunities. So these are things that we really have to pay attention to. On the state level, I just wanted to mention the MS4 program, and that I know some of the towns have been talking about reforming it and trying to make it more effective. And I know that at the state level, I know we could count on our local representation to help with that. As far as the septic systems, Legislator Hahn did go on that septic tour, and she did look at the advanced systems. And I have to give County Executive Ballone credit for having the leadership to push this through. It was Suffolk County Health Department that for years, when we had people move septic systems away from surface waters and away from wetlands, there was no way of having people put in advanced treatment. And now all of a sudden that door is open. And so the advanced treatment is going to go a long way. It's going to take a lot of work. No one's quite sure which system to use where yet and how to mandate that. But at least the door is being opened, and that's going to make a big difference. And we can't leave this off. And I consider this to be an economic roundtable as much as an environmental roundtable, because the economy and the East End is tied to the environment, and you can't separate the two. But I can't leave off without talking about wildlife. And I'd like to thank you for your leadership, and Assemblyman Thiel. The wildlife populations on the East End, and I grew up on a farm in Cutchogue, and we never saw a deer. And the geese were something that flew overhead, and people went to Eastern Shore, Virginia, and down to Maryland and Delaware to hunt the geese, and they never landed, and there was a lot more open farm fields here for them to land on. If you had a dairy operation with 30 to 40,000 head of cows, you would be so highly regulated through the DEC CAPO regulations. And yet, can you imagine the waste that all those deer produce on Long Island? If you had a duck farm, and I remember I could see politicians screaming on TV, we got to close the duck farms down, they're polluting everything, when actually it was a lot of the cesspools. If you had so many, you could never envision so many geese in our surface waters, and the amount of pollution they're causing. And they're contributing to the closure of underwater lands, and they're preventing people from going out in the creek and shellfishing and eating the shellfish. And I think and I know we've made great strides in the past year as far as increasing the season, increasing bag limits, but I think there's a lot more that could be done as far as increasing the seasons further for these and increasing the bag limits more to help control some of these what have become nuisance populations that are really affecting our quality of life. So I thank you for that, and please keep up the good work on everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
We're going to John Pavasek. By the way, there's less than half an hour. No,
I promise to be very quick. Adding to what Supervisor Romaine mentioned about the Carmens River, we're also starting to focus over the past year on the Upper Carmens River watershed, trying to address some of the prolific legal activities that are occurring there, particularly ATVs, off-road vehicles, and dumping. And we're working with both our law enforcement council and coalitions of folks from the community and other agencies to address that, looking ahead. Our wildfire task force, our prior chairman, John Yurovich, very tragically passed away just under a year ago, but we have a new chair. We're looking forward to working with Chip Bancroft, who is the chief of the fire department at Cabreski Airport, and also a longtime member of the fire service, and he's a dynamic person who's looking to make a lot of progress in that regard. In regard to compliance and enforcement, we are working on developing new enforcement regulations, and so maybe in need of looking to get additional authorization into Article 57 to assist us in the strengthening our enforcement, particularly in regard to ATVs, off-road vehicles, and dumping. In our law enforcement council, we have a new chair and co-vice chair. And so we're looking to move ahead with them and to address some of the issues that law enforcement faces, particularly in these challenging times of budget restrictions. And then finally, in regard to education and outreach, last year we did an inaugural A Day in the Life of the Peconic Estuary, which was modeled after a very successful day in the life of the Carmens River. It was wildly successful, encompassed the entire Peconic estuary, a multitude of schools, educators, scientists, and volunteers, and in fact we were successfully just obtained a grant from the Peconic Estuary Program for additional materials to aid in that. So we're looking forward to continuing to improve and expand that program. Thank you very much.
Okay. One of the great partners that we have had in the development of the Pine Barrens legislation and CPF has been the Suffolk County Water Authority. Carrie, you want to?
Yes, I love
make a few quick points, one of which I kind of alluded to in yelling out to John before. But
thank you, Carrie Gallagher. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer with the Suffolk County Water Authority, and we are currently the chair of an entity that was created at the end of 2013 by both county legislatures, the Long Island Commission for Aquifer Protection. So Karen, getting to your point, there is actually a body that is trying to come together and work productively on the issue focused solely on groundwater and aquifer protection. And getting to a point that Mary Ann made, it includes the people from Nassau County. So we are trying to make sure that we're working together to protect this regional resource that we share that does not recognize any political boundaries. Some of the key goals moving forward and what we're trying to tackle right now is one, coming out with the State of the Aquifer report. And part of what we found in trying to produce that first annual report is there are some significant data gaps. So in addition to giving DEC some additional people, it would be nice to give them some 21st century tools, such as electronic reporting for water withdrawals, which would make it easier to quantify what's happening, as well as GIS, so they could map where those water withdrawals are occurring. I know this sounds kind of crazy that they don't have these tools, but again, these are things we found out. Another big piece of the puzzle is just a comprehensive water quality database for all of Long Island, so that all of the water quality data that's being collected by anybody, by the counties, by the water authorities, the water districts, by other entities, could be put into one place, could be compiled, could be integrated, could be analyzed, and you could get all the data you wanted sliced and diced so you'd know what's happening. And a key component of that is it would have to be continuous. You would really need continuous monitoring and continuous updating of that. So one of the things we're also looking at is there's a proposal right now by the U.S. Geological Survey to implement such a continuous Sentinel water quality monitoring program that would be for both counties, again, both in Nassau and Suffolk. We've done a much better job of having continuous water quality monitoring in Suffolk. It's important that our sister county of Nassau has that same information at their fingertips, and that, again, that it's continuous and there aren't years that because of a funding shortage or issue at the local level, all of a sudden that data is not being collected and reported on. So I would like to get everyone involved. I'll try to follow up and get email addresses from everyone who attended so we can include you in invites to those meetings for both the larger commission as well as some subcommittees that have started to work on trying to produce now a Long Island groundwater resources management plan. The last one that was done island-wide as an actual groundwater management plan was in 1986 by New York State DEC. And I think, Peter, you're going to be highlighting some of those findings next week, right, at the LIA?
Yes.
And one last point I just wanted to make, and this addresses an issue that Kara Hahn brought up, Legislator Kara Hahn, is the concerns with some of the things that the county health department can no longer tackle because of a lack of resources. So we have been working cooperatively with them in what might be considered a smart government initiative. We have a state-of-the-art laboratory. We have 50 chemists and technicians who work there. We sample for twice as many compounds as we are required to by law. And some of the things that we sample for, collect for, and are able to analyze, the health department cannot currently do. So we're collaborating with them to figure out how we can assist them in providing that analysis for water quality so that that information is available, not just from our deeper public supply wells, but also for the more shallower monitoring wells. And on that note, I would invite everyone to participate. Thank you very much. And in 4 years, LICAP is supposed to go away because hopefully the state, through leadership of Senator LaValle and Assemblyman Engelbart, will have made our work redundant.
Okay. The next person I want to introduce has been a person who has not missed an environmental roundtable, who has truly been one of the environmental stewards on the East End in two capacities, as supervisor and as a county legislator. All I know is that his term is coming to an end as Suffolk County legislator, but he has been just magnificent on this issue and other issues. Jay, we're going to miss your stewardship, and just give you a minute or so. Okay. Jay Schneiderman.
Thank you so much, Senator LaValle. It's certainly been a pleasure working with you all these years. And we are all very fortunate to have your leadership and your legacy in protecting the environment. So first, let me thank you for bringing us all together. It's always great. There seems to be more and more people each year. And thank you all for coming. I know it's a happy hour on a Friday. But we did learn tonight that we hit $1 billion in CPF revenue. So I will drink to that later. So that's great, great news. And I had the great fortune when I was town supervisor of getting the pleasure of spending some of that money. And we did some great things. You know, properties like the Shadmore property, Jacob's Farm, worked with many of you in the room. I'm looking at Bob Luke, and I'm looking at John Halsey, Dick Amper. It was really remarkable and continues to be a remarkable legacy. It's forever. And to you and to Assemblyman Thiel and guys like Kevin McDonald and Bob Luke, who I mentioned, all the people who really put this thing together, really, we'll be forever grateful because it really has changed the landscape permanently. I'll speak of only one topic tonight because I have some good news. I guess you could say it's good news and bad news in a way. The good news is I was in front of the county's Water Quality Review Committee and got a unanimous recommendation for funding of a hydrothermal study of the Long Island Sound and the Peconic Estuary. That hopefully will be done by Stony Brook School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. That's the good news because we'll have a predictive model to see how heat moves within the body and what the ecological impacts from the deposition of heat into the Long Island Sound will be into the future. The reason why that's important is the Long Island Sound is in trouble. It's been warming at a rate of 1 degree per decade since really for the last half a century. So 50 years ago, the temperature was on average about 5 degrees cooler. That is serious ecologically because warmer water, one, carries less oxygen, but also there are many species that can't survive in those warmer temperatures. We've lost our lobster population, degraded our winter flounder population, our eelgrass population. The Sound is in crisis, and one of the reasons why this study is so important is there is a request across the Long Island Sound from the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant for a new 5-year permit to continue putting heat into the Long Island Sound. They bring in about 2 billion gallons a day that they use to cool their reactors. And they release it 20 degrees warmer. And if you monitor sound temperatures, as you get closer to New London, you will see an increase. So it may be 29 degrees in this area and in Montauk. As you get closer, around 40 or 50 miles out from the plant, you see it go up a degree, 40 miles another degree. As you get closer to New London, you'll see the temperatures about 4 to 5 degrees warmer than the region. So, in fact, the temperatures in the Long Island Sound in New London, you have to go all the way down to Virginia to find water temperatures that warm. Even Atlantic City has cooler waters. So it's really an interesting issue and we want to have an impact. Adrian Esposito was great with Citizens Campaign for the Environment, advocating for the study as well. And now it goes before the legislature on Tuesday. I'm hoping that's where the critical piece is. I'm hoping we'll get the support from my colleagues at the legislature. If anybody wants to come on Tuesday and advocate for its passage, we need to get comments. If the study is done, we can get those comments to Connecticut regulators. Peter, your partners in the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection issued the permit under the Clean Water Act. That permit is scheduled to be renewed in September, so we have a tight window of time. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Malcolm, do you want to just make a response? We're getting into a time, if you can limit your comments, because I have a couple of people.
Very quickly, I've been studying Long Island Sound for 45 years, and it's true, it's very interesting. It's got one of the highest temperature ranges of any major estuary in the world. In winter right now, it's freezing, goes up to 29, 30 degrees in the summer. As you know, it led to the demise of the lobster industry in 1999. The biggest threat, actually, Long Island Sound comes from New York City and that huge amount of nutrients that comes out of that East River. I don't know what we do about that, but that is a huge problem. I just want to talk briefly about Flax Pond. Now, Flax Pond is a 145-acre wetland on the North Shore of Long Island. It has special importance, even though it's a tiny size, and
Does
that
he know how to
acts
suck up
as
to you?
a barometer or benchmark by which all other wetlands around Long Island are measured. It's relatively undeveloped, but Flax Pond is in a crisis. It is off limits to shellfishing 365 days a year. The finfish is disappearing, the spartina is disappearing. So as a benchmark, as a standard by which we hold all other estuaries, it's in crisis. Now why is that? It's because the inlet is clogged. The inlet is clogged with sand and it's moved and blocked the entrance. So we've been holding a bunch of hearings, seminars this winter through the Friends of Flax Pond about what to do. We've had scientific studies. This Sunday we have people in authority in this room. We're going to speak about some of the practicalities of what we do. We have Mr. Engelbright, Mr. Galuzio, and Mr. Granis. I hope you're coming. I haven't heard from you yet.
My name's not Granis, it's Scully.
Scully, I'm sorry.
But Malcolm, tell people where Flax Pond is.
Flax Pond is just north of Stony Brook University. It's cradled by the village of Oakfield in Setauket. And it's a marine nursery that fertilizes all of Long Island Sound in New England. It's dying, and we've got to do something about it.
Okay. Legislator Anchor.
Sorry, who was next?
And then Bridget Fleming, and then we're going to get to you, Kevin.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but I know it's getting late. Real quick, thank you, as always. Thank you, everybody, for being here. North Shore Coastal Erosion Task Force. This was the task force that I sponsored a resolution created for Suffolk County, and I know, working with Pete Scully, DEC, Stony Brook University, and the county's Environment and Planning Department. And what we're trying to do is map our North Shore. My district, Mount Sinai to Wading River, I have houses sliding off the cliffs. They literally, they have done that. So we need to focus on that. A lot of focus has been on the South Shore with Superstorm Sandy. We need to focus on the North Shore. So, and I want to thank Pete for all the work that you're doing. And I do hear, there's a coastal hazard mapping project going on, and the maps have been submitted and they're in for review. So I ask that if there's any way we can expedite that so we can work with Professor, I call him Professor Henry, who's over at Stony Brook University, who's looking to do a project to prioritize those areas that are in most severe erosion. So again, if we could, if the state could work on that, that would be wonderful. Another project is propagating pollinating species to help support our agricultural community. So creating school programs, and again, if anybody here, the organizations that have school programs, please contact my office. I'm creating a list to submit to the schools in Suffolk County and colleges. I work closely with them as chair of education for the county. So looking forward to doing that. And that's working with the Soil and Water Conservation Committee, which Al and I both are members of. So again, trying to connect the dots there. And energy efficiency, working on energy efficiency programs for our seniors. I've got about 50 private communities, most of them seniors, and we're looking, especially Leisure Village, and trying to figure out what we can do and how to connect them with the programs that they may have. If you have any grants available, state grants, we'll definitely see what we can do if we can apply to those. And last but not least, the jetty. If there's any way we can get some state funding to help fix the Mount Sinai jetty, so Suffolk County can dredge. Suffolk County, I'm holding a couple $1 million to dredge Mount Sinai Harbor, but we need to fix those jetties, both on the east side and also on the west side of Fort Jefferson. So, but again, thank you for your help.
Bridget.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bridget Fleming from the Southampton Town Board, and thank you, Senator LaValle, for this excellent forum. We in Southampton Town have been very successful in the past year with the efforts towards water quality, farmland preservation, and we recently banned the single-use plastic bags. And I think we have so many people around the table to thank, both from all levels of government, particularly the DEC, which I'd like to get back to in a second, but also all the advocates, and you, Senator LaValle, for your leadership. I think you've proven that the eastern end of Long Island is the environmental leader of New York State, and I think Assemblyman Engelbright's recent appointment confirms that, so congratulations, Assemblyman. I just wanted to reiterate the concerns with regard to the revitalization of the DEC with a little example from our experience. We're about to start hearings on wholesale revision of our waste management code. And it's spurred specifically from the 2010 New York State Beyond Waste Plan, and the requirement of that plan that we revise our solid waste management plan. The Beyond Waste Plan also requires that municipalities, what are called planning units, track the solid waste in their planning units. It's really important for the town of Southampton because we estimate that 85% of our solid waste is carted out of town by private haulers, and who are completely unregulated. We have no idea in terms of the components of that solid waste, the materials that are being brought out, how much it is and what happens to it. So I can say, having worked on this for 5 years, that without that New York State requirement and the DEC's support, including funding, we would not be undertaking this very important sort of cultural shift in our town. The underside of that, the problem with it is because of what I perceive as staffing limitations at the DEC, it has just taken a crazy amount of time. The back and forth in terms of the submission of the plan and then our responses that we've gotten back from DEC has taken literally years. It's a really important undertaking. I'm very glad that the impetus has come from the state, but the DEC needs to better staffing. I noticed in the executive budget there are recommendations for both increased appropriations and some limited increased staffing, but I don't know that it's adequate to what we need at the municipal level, and you see really true results from what the DEC is doing, so I would just reiterate that need that we have at the local level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin McAllister.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin McAllister. Thank you, Senator. And by the way, it was a cold February night of 1999, your first roundtable, Suffolk Community College.
Wow.
A couple of items I'd like to talk about. Thank you and Assemblyman Thiel for introducing a bill for equality, I guess, on the inshore fisheries. And it's hard to talk about that right now with a foot of ice out there, but obviously with the baymen and their problems with respect to keeping that livelihood going, I think it's a very positive thing, and good close analysis of that allocation is very important. With respect to surface water quality, and Mr. Krupski, you had mentioned, and I'm very pleased to see we are making significant movement with advanced wastewater treatment. That's a very positive thing on many fronts. Mr. Krupski mentioned, we really don't know what those systems are, and I would really go to water quality standards, discharge standards, highest achievable levels, and that we do know. The industry has produced. We know what those levels are. As technology evolves over time, then we adjust our codes to reflect higher levels of treatment. On the receiving end, in 1987, the EPA directed the states to ultimately develop numeric nutrient standards. New York has not done that yet. And yet science, at least on the freshwater systems, wadable streams, lakes, even coastal waters for that matter, the science is in. And I think we really have to start to put those in place on the receiving waters, so it, in turn, I would argue, would push more advanced treatment and with respect to, obviously, our groundwater influences. Lastly, when it comes to, and I'm going now to the coastal side, the Coastal Erosion Hazard Act. We've seen, obviously, the science that's coming in on sea level rise. There was just a study that was just released looking at tidal gauge information. That's quite alarming, a couple of inches in a matter of several years. I see it on the ground. I hope everyone else does. We have erosion hotspots throughout Long Island. We're responding to Sandy, we're responding to nor'easters, but there hasn't been a coherent approach. And I think the wrong approach is to be responsive or reactive, where we are starting to place in hardened structures, rock revetments, geotubes alike. Again, on a state level, as they delegate down to local authorities on a town level and even down to the village level, we're all kind of operating in isolation. And I think this is a real urgent issue, right back to water quality with our septics and groundwater, to our viability of our beaches and bay shorelines for ecological purposes. So if I may suggest, I think a real priority issue is, to convene, the appropriate parties to really get serious about coastal policy, because I think it's really in need of more aggressive stance on shoreline hardening in particular. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. With that, we have reached the hour. I'm going to let my colleague here, who's chair, say some final goodbyes, observations. Steve?
Well, as I begin this assignment as chair, the new speaker, Carl Hasty, who, by the way, is a SUNY at Stony Brook graduate, and therefore we still can claim him as a resident of our county, has asked me to also chair a climate change working group. It includes a number of people who have been named. Others who are on the committee will be invited to participate. Many of the issues that I'm hearing here relate to changes in the climate and the challenge that we have going forward to establish an inventory of these problems and a timetable for and a series of legislative efforts to begin to resolve and solve some of these issues is a major task. I would value your input as we go forward, and I know that my colleagues on the committee and on the working group would also value your input. This is a very useful forum, a tradition since 1999. It's one that I would value a chance to see the full tape. I did come in about halfway.
Yeah, we'll get you.
And I thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to working with everybody on these and other issues that may present themselves.
Just in closing, how things have changed for those people who were here at the very beginning. The dominance of issues all surrounded land, preservation of land. And that was barely mentioned other than recognition of what the CPF has done and hitting a momentous mark of $1 billion. And actually, Fred was going to be here with champagne to celebrate that act. But
so that's why he didn't make it.
Started early.
So last year we started a journey dealing with water, and I might say that Kevin McAllister, I don't know how many years back, talked about its importance and sewerage draining and pictures of cesspools with the covers halfway undone. And we have come a huge way. And if you think of this as a journey, we have picked up players along the way at the county level, the county executive, the governor weighed in. We were never quite sure when he was weighing in. We were kind of waiting, but he did. And he has committed money to this endeavor. Anna Throne-Holtz has done and put a spotlight on technology and has linked up with Stony Brook University to see how we can collaborate and zero in on the technology issue. And then there is probably not a person in this room that hasn't played a role. Preservation Supervisor Brookhaven played a major role with civic associations and other environmental individuals to shape something to protect the Carmen's River and enhance the Pine Barrens. So the message has shifted, but now we have a tremendous challenge because we have a lot of players who are all around and want to be part of this. So sometimes you have to be a director and tell people when to come in and when to step out. I do not doubt that we are going to advance the ball further this year and hopefully get to where everyone wants to get. We have a very, very important player, and I don't want to put pressure on him, but having Steve in that chairmanship will be very, very valuable. Be valuable during the budget when we need a push. It will be valuable in bringing people together to get a result. So I can't thank everyone around for the roles that you play each and every day. The residents of this county are really blessed to have such a commitment from so many dedicated people. Thanks for being here again.